downward pressure or fewer housing projects penciling, or do you think this is nominal enough that it's not going to do that?
I mean, I'll give you my 2 cents that when you take out the residential, which is just a single family home that someone buys outside of a subdivision or wants to build outside of a subdivision, you know, there's a fairly low cost. So when you get into the plats, which is a subdivision of more than 9 lots, you're paying $8,000 for a subdivision, and that cost breaks down. You could break it down and say that it's 8,000 divided by 10 lots, let's say. So $800 per lot is how it would pencil, plus the additional facility fees. So I don't want to make it sound like it's just 800, but so as you develop a bigger subdivision, there's probably some economy of scale that even more so that's achieved. Although Jacob on the next slide I think is going to talk about continuing with some linear charges. But it does when you see the plat cost, that is not per lot, that is spread out over an entire subdivision.
Starting at $8,000.
Okay, so the second part, the second component of the fee schedule now, on the left, the current fee schedule on the left shows a per linear foot charge, and it actually has a lot of different elements to it, the way it's written now. There's a different fee for utilities and storm systems within private streets, and there's a different charge on the bottom for public and private streets. And then to make it even more kind of not straightforward, you have a discount. Well, you have different fee structures based on if you have, so your first 1,000 feet you pay $725 per foot. Your next 1,500 feet you pay $375 per foot, and it goes on. And I mean, even as an engineer, sometimes the calculations become a little bit challenging, especially when some of these projects span multiple years with multiple different fee schedules, and the quantities are constantly changing. So it's a moving target to try to figure out exactly what the quantity is. So that sometimes calculating the quantity itself becomes an exercise not only for us but for the applicant as well. On the right, we propose $5.60. So we ran some modeling to see what would be the per linear foot charged based on the averages of the projects that we see, and we can simplify it and get it to $5.60 per linear foot. And what we would be proposing to do is we would be collecting 30% of this per linear foot charge with their second review, and the remaining part of it when they go to construction. So it sounds a little weird, but that 30% actually gets us to full cost recovery for the design review side of it. And then when we go into construction, the remaining 70% of this per linear foot charge gets us to full cost recovery on the construction side of it, because we're looking at our design review costs versus our inspection costs. And actually, it ends up it's about 50-50. They're just being collected at different times here. So after all that, the bottom line. So if we compare the different project types on the left and what their average fees are for those projects today for each project, compared to what we are proposing in the 2020 fee schedule, should we pursue the 100% cost recovery that we've been talking about, we can see that there are some pretty significant increases when you look at dollar amounts and percent changes. But once again, when we talk about the size of these projects, so the plat project that's going from $28,000 to say $53,000 in fees on average, you're still looking at a very large, very expensive project where this is a low percentage of the total project cost here and wouldn't be likely to make a plat infeasible or not pencil out. On the other end of the spectrum, you have single family homes. Currently $2,400 would be the average fee. This is going up to $3,800, which is a $1,400 change, which is not insignificant for someone building a home, but in the cost of all the different fees and everything that goes into building a home, it's proportional to that size of that project. I will say again too that a lot of, well, I haven't said this before, but a lot of the single family homes, we don't see as many FACs for the single family homes. They don't either trigger as often, or sometimes they are being granted a deferral of the improvements to when they might make more sense at a later date. So the sample size for the single-family homes is actually relatively small. So we're looking for questions and consensus. These proposals, we were talking about revenue changes earlier. If we went for the full cost recovery here, we'd be talking about roughly $180,000 estimated increase in revenue to get to the full cost recovery here, starting next year in 2020.
One thing that I'd like to add, just in terms of 100% cost recovery, we took that concept or that potential objective, and Jacob was describing sort of these 3 points where you collect, and we were trying to think of a way to ensure that there's that cost recovery through a project, because projects get abandoned, some don't move forward. Sometimes we spend a ton of time on a project and then it doesn't happen and we don't collect the fee. So we might have only collect $2,400 or something like that, and literally have a cumulative 470 hours in it between all the people that have worked on it. So we wanted to splice that up a little bit so that, like Jacob described, you get a cost, an application fee that covers first round of review at 100%. The next time you pay, you're kind of paying in installments for the completion of the review at 100%. Then the inspection of the project at 100%. Really, not only so that it's fair for the city, but also for the customer as well, so that they're not overpaying, or, because that's happened too, where they've gotten to the end of the project, they've paid all the fees, and then they don't build it. So then they've paid us too much. So that's happened too. So it's a way to try to balance that out through the whole process.
I think this is a wonderful model that you guys have put together. I mean, all of us on this dais want to get our full costs. We don't want to leave anything on the table. So this is a wonderful concept, and I support it. Just that I've always been bugged about, hey, are we getting enough costs? Well, it's like the Parks Department fees. Are we charging enough, So this is good, and I appreciate your work.
Councilmember Brown? Yeah, has there been consultation with the developer community on this? Has there been any input by builders?
Other than some discussions about, we have mentioned that we are pursuing additional cost recovery as we move forward. And they saw some of that last year with the increased, and we actually I didn't hear any pushback on what we had done last year as we moved towards that. But we haven't sent them this proposal and had the separate discussion, though.
Councilmember Holman?
In my 8 years of tenure on city council, this is the third or fourth time FAC charge topic has come before us. And in the past, we were always aware that we were charging so little to provide such a large inspection service. And so the discussion in previous years has been, let's not do it all at once to really impact our economic development potential, but our goal is to arrive at 100%. So I'm very happy to support going to 100% finally, but we've done it gradually over 3 or 4 bites at the achieving 100%. So I'm in favor of going to 100%.
Just have a point of clarification. So a multifamily, if a developer comes in and builds a 10-unit apartment complex, and we have a 500-unit apartment complex, are they both paying the same fee? Or is it going to be graduated based upon unit?
So on first intake, they would be paying the same base application fee. More than likely, though, the larger development's gonna have more facilities, so there's gonna be possibly a higher per facility charge, that $1,500 per facility. They might have the same number of facilities, it might work out that way. Where the correction would happen would be the per linear foot charges. The 500 unit complex, like we see up north happening now, has quantity, linear feet in the thousands, where the smaller complex would be in the hundreds. So that's kind of the variation in scale.
So just help me out here. So if we have a existing average fee of 23,000 and we jump to 40,000, that's the fee no matter what size multifamily is being built, no matter what.
So the proposed average fee on the multifamily of 40,000?
Yeah.
No, that would be just an average of what the fee would be for the range of projects that we generally see.
Okay, right, it's okay, thank you.
And I would say that on those application fees, when you submit, that oftentimes, whether it's a smaller project or a really complex project, there's still a lot of the same upfront cost for the city. So that's why we felt that there's equity when it comes to the application time, to treat them all the same, treat all multifamily the same. And that it does, it pencils out when you get to the second payment and the third payment, when you're calculating in those linear footage. But I want to emphasize that setting these applications up and going through first round of review and organizing and coordinating everybody's comments and, you know, the extent of the review. Small and big projects are oftentimes very comparable in how much work goes into them.
Any other questions or comments?
Have we kind of arrived at some sort of consensus
So
here?
moving forward, we're going from 40 to 60 to 100. So we've got a consensus. Thank you, gentlemen.
Good job.
Move back over to Deputy Director Wilbur.
All right. Thank you, Claude. Are there any other discussion items from the council? Any new business you want to add at this point for discussion? All right. Then we'll go to the matrix. And right now, we have 5 items on our matrix. Does any council member have any comments or changes to what you see there on page 84? Any comment? Any changes? All right. I do have one, and that's item 2. I would like to add right after the TBD, put in parens, 2020, into parens. Because, you know, we discussed this before, and bringing the new council in, this presentation would be a great 101 introduction and orientation to new council. So if you could just add TBD and then put in parens, 2020, end of parens. That's all I see is change.
Excellent suggestion, boss.
Well, just so you know, there are no more public works and community development meetings in 2019 anyway.
So,
Just wait, no matter what.
yeah, right. All right. So, anything from the council before we depart? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.